December 22nd, in the Christmas story of how Winston delivered Christmas. Chapter 22, Great Flying Mouse. Me, cried Winston. Fly? Yes, said Eduardo, as it was a perfectly ordinary everyday thing for a mouse to take to the skies. It'll be easy. Look, there's a Winston-sized seat behind the controls of that plane. We'll take it up to the roof, and you can set off from there. You'll be at the North Pole in no time at all. You might even meet Father Christmas's sleigh on the way. Winston wasn't in the slightest bit sure about any of this. It was dangerous enough for a little mouse like him just walking about in the city. He didn't dare to imagine what it might be like to fly above one. And how would he ever know which way the North Pole was? He didn't have a map. Don't worry, said Eduardo, as if reading Winston's mind. Look for the brightest star in the sky, and that's the North Star. Just follow that, and you'll know you're going the right way. Winston still wasn't convinced, but then he looked at the envelope he'd been carrying all evening. Everyone deserves a happy Christmas, he thought to himself. He had to fly that plane to the North Pole and complete his mission, no matter how scary it was. He stuck out his chin and nodded. I'll do it, he said. Oh, bravo, hooted Eduardo, beaming. We haven't a moment to lose. They clambered up the model Father Christmas and standing on his head, unhooked the toy plane from the ceiling and carefully lowered it to the ground. Right, Eduardo puffed. When they were safely back on the floor, now we just need to get up to the roof. Winston thought of all the hundreds of steps that wound up and around the 5 stories from the entrance hall, and he groaned. It's going to take us all night to get up the stairs with this. It's quite heavy. Oh, we aren't going to take the stairs. We'll whiz up to the roof in an elevator, said Eduardo. Follow me. Winston hadn't a clue what an elevator was, but he had no choice other than to help Eduardo with the plane and tag along with him. He walked as briskly as he could towards a row of shiny brass doors set in a nearby wall. Potted palm plants separated them, and Eduardo scampered up one to press a neat little button set into the wall. The ground immediately began to tremble, and Winston felt afraid. What was happening? He glanced at Eduardo. He was back beside Winston now, and was cheerfully waiting and whistling a jolly Christmas tune. The trembling stopped, and one set of doors opened, revealing a velvet-lined and gold-trimmed elevator. Eduardo hurried Winston and the plane inside. He clambered up the velvet wall coverings and pressed a little button that was hidden behind a small plate underneath rows of other large buttons. The entire thing started to shake and shudder as it began to swoosh upwards. That's a secret button for getting straight to the roof, said Eduardo proudly. Only important staff like me know about it. Winston would never forget the short journey in the elevator. He didn't know what was up and down now. He was just all about, and he tumbled over several times. It was a relief when they came to a stop and the doors flew open with a smart little thing of a bell. They dragged the plane out on the roof and looked out about in silence. The weather has taken a turn for the worse while Winston had been inside the department store. A fearful wind roared and howled, and thick curtains of snow swirled around him, making it difficult to see. Winston gulped. His fur was prickling with nerves. If he squinted, he could just make out the other buildings of the city stretched out all around him. He was very high up, and he could hear the traffic purring far below. We'll need a good runway for you to take off from, shouted Eduardo over the wind. He pointed to a raised buttress at the back of the building. It was only a foot or so off the ground, and by pushing and shoving and heaving and pulling, they got the plane up on top of it. The tiny plane rocked wildly. The propeller started to spin. Winston clambered into the cockpit. There was another seat behind him, but it was too small for Eduardo to join him. You'll have to stay here, shouted Winston over the noise. Thank you for all your help. Eduardo patted Winston kindly on the paw. You are welcome here at Fort Tasks any time you like. Winston nestled down into his seat and gripped the controls tightly. Eduardo started to push the plane, slowly at first, and then faster and faster. The edge of the building came into view, and beyond it just seemed like a big black void with snow swirling like a whirlpool. The propeller whirred. Winston held his breath, and with a final shove, Eduardo pushed Winston and the plane over the edge of the roof.